Is Alex Jafari, and I'm here with Irfan to go over homework for chapter 3.1. Hi, Irfan.
Hi Alex, how's it going?
It's going well. Today, we're actually going to learn something new as well. We're going to learn a new IDE. So, if you recall, we previously worked with IntelliJ, but today I'm going to show you how to use Visual Studio as well. So, all you need to do is just Google Visual Studio download, and then the website for Visual Studio, the official website, will pop up, and then you can select whichever operating system you have. If you have Mac, Linux, or Windows, and you easily just download it. It's important for you to be familiar with different IDEs because as you go with different jobs, you might need to work with different IDEs. So it's important for you to practice those. All right, any questions about Visual Studio?
No, let's do the homework.
Excellent. All right. So if you recall, the homework is about Pokemons and that there are mythical creatures that have a name, age, and gender and an origin. So we first need to start with an original Pokemon, and then we can create, a sub Pokemon that has an origin. So let's go ahead. We're not opening any new folders. This is just like we're fresh. It's a fresh directory. So you can use the command N on Mac or Control N on Windows to start a new file. Or you can just pop it up from here, new text file or new file. And we're going to call it class original Pokemon. What I want to do here is I want to make sure this is a Java class so that original Pokemon.java. Excellent. All right. So now that we have this class, Irfan, what do we think are important information that we need to represent in this class?
So, as we saw in the question, there is a name, an age, and a gender, which all original Pokemons have.
Okay. How do we represent name?
Now, we use a string type,
Yep.
a string name.
Perfect.
Then for age, it's going to be an int age.
What makes great programmers great programmers?
The common, so the first names only, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Pokemons have last names, but just making sure. All right. What about for age, did you say?
I said an int age would be good, I think.
Okay.
Let's say for the comments, let's say the year they were born, for example.
So I think that's going to be a little bit more difficult because that's birth year. That's not age anymore. So instead, we could say age in years or in months if that's how you want to represent it. Does that make sense? Great. All right. And then what's the last thing that we need to represent?
We need to represent gender as well. So I think there's just two answers for gender. There's obviously male and female, but I think we cannot use the Boolean type here because maybe it gets mixed up. For example, somebody may write man or woman. I think a string would be good. Am I right?
So good question. So first of all, let me clarify. Even though humans can have different genders and, it's a fluid situation, with Pokemons, we're assuming there's only two genders. So we'll assume with that, it's just either a male or a female, let's say. So even though you might think that, a Boolean might be difficult to interpret, strings are so much harder. Remember that strings are never to be used as a representation of data because they're just not really good representation. They're only good for something like name where It's very different. It's very, separate and everything. But um, it's easy to misspell. It's easy to have a different capitalization. So what you want is definitely a Boolean now that we know about it. However, to make sure it's clear, you could say something like is female. And then it's super clear. It's true if female, false otherwise. Does that make
Makes
sense?
sense. Yeah.
This would actually also allow for more gender fluid Pokemons because if they don't identify as a male or a female, this Boolean would still be false and it wouldn't mean anything. So it would be okay.
Okay.
Great. All right. So this is a very important thing, and you'll come across it later on as well. Always try to represent information as something other than strings.
Right.
Excellent. What else do we need to do here?
So we need also to create a constructor, I assume.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So original Pokemon takes in a string name. I'm going quickly on this because supposedly by now people are really quick on writing constructors because you're familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just do this dot name, gets name. Oops. Age, and this dot is female, gets is female. All right, great. Anything else we need to do?
So I think here we need to create a different class for Pokemons.
Yes, exactly. So a different class would typically be in a different file, but for the sake of our homework, we're just going to do it in this file just so that everyone can see everything at the same time. But you would create a new file called Pokemon only. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
All right. What do we do here?
So there's some similar information between these.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can pass it on to them, like name and age and gender again.
Yep, exactly. In fact, they're so similar, we can essentially copy this. Change this to Pokemon. Oops. And then all we need to add is the original Pokemon, right?
Exactly.
What should be the type?
It's gonna be an original Pokemon, and I don't think it has a type because we're calling it.
The type is original Pokemon. That's what a type means. So for here, the type is a string. This, the type is an int. This, the type is a Boolean. This, it's going to be an original Pokemon. Does that make
Okay.
sense? Because you're saying, hey, I have a field. Type is essentially kind. So like, what kind is it? What is this field? And you're saying, well, it's a number, so it's an int. Or what type is it? Well, it's a toggle, so it's a Boolean. All right, and what do we need to do here? Original Pokemon.
Original Pokemon origin. We have to give it a name.
Yes. What do you want the name to be?
Like just origin?
Yep, origin is fine. And we can just add a comment. The original Pokemon. This evolved from. Beautiful. What else do we need to do?
So now, excuse me, there's something, I cannot quite see the board.
Oh. How about now?
Okay, that's far better.
Okay.
So now, now we'll have some method to get the name, gender, and age.
Why do we need those?
For example, when in the main file we want to write a code for it, there should be some field to get the name, right?
Mm, but there's no question about getting the name. The question is just represent these classes and then just instantiate it with your favorite Pokemon.
Okay, so I think now we can instantiate this code, right?
Okay, if you're sure. So let's say in the class main, um, we're trying to instantiate a Pokemon. How do we instantiate it?
Pokemon, let's give it a name, Pokemon, like favorite,
Uh-huh.
get new Pokemon.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Here, there's some names and stuff. I don't know if it accepts it this way.
Yeah, that's what the constructor is for, remember? The constructor is saying, hey, whenever someone tries to instantiate a class, give me a name, give me an age, give me an is female, and I will set it to all of these.
Okay, so now we give it a name.
Uh-huh.
Say its name is Max.
Max, the Pokemon, okay.
Their age is 21.
Wow.
Let's say, yeah.
They're a drinking Pokemon, okay.
And the Boolean is gonna be false because it's a male Pokemon.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's the way we represent it, isn't it?
It is, but remember, the homework says the Pokemon has an original Pokemon that it evolved from. We haven't passed that in.
So we give the original Pokemon name to the parentheses here.
How do you mean? Sorry.
Like after false,
Yeah.
there should be another, like, what is the name of the original Pokemon?
You're giving it an origin. You're giving it a name, like Robert, like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There are several problems with this. So first, the constructor here is only expecting three things. So when you give it something else, it will give you an error because it says, well, what are you doing? I only need three things. Okay? And that's because in here we forgot to add our field here. So we have to make sure that the constructor has all the fields that we require. So we need to do something like this.
Yes, but origin gets origin.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Now it's saying, okay, you're giving me four things and I'm expecting four things. The first one is a string, so that's correct. The second one is an int, so that's correct. The third one is a boolean, so that's correct. The fourth one, you're giving me a string, but I'm expecting an original Pokemon. Do you think it will like that?
So in the original Pokemon class, we had all these informations again, so we have to write them for original Pokemon too?
Yes, but how do we do that? How do we create an original Pokemon?
And how do we do it?
So we need to instantiate it the same way as we have instantiated Pokemon. So we need to create an original Pokemon class, instantiation, called Origin, let's say. And just like this, just like how you make an example of a Pokemon, you need to make an example of an original one. So then it's expecting a name. So let's say Robert. It's expecting an age. So since it's an original, it should probably be older than Max. So let's say 25. It is also not a female. And that's it, right? Because original Pokemon is only expecting a name, an age, and a Boolean, right?
Exactly. But do we call it with the codes now that we have it?
No, so because it's not a string anymore, we're just passing in this guy. So we're just writing origin. Does this make
Okay,
sense?
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you wanted to change this or if you wanted to add another one, you can just add a new one with a different name and you pass in that name.
Got that. Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so that's problem 1. Let's go with problem 2. Whoopsie. Let's create a new file. And it's going to be, let's say, vaccines. Okay. All right. So the homework problem says, let me just copy it over actually. Okay. To fight a global pandemic, vaccines were developed. Some vaccines are single dose and others are 2-dose with the specified injection dates. So we want to represent vaccines and a patient that has received 1 or 2 shots of vaccines. And then we want to add a method that returns a date when a person is fully vaccinated, the day of their final dose. Does this problem make sense? Do you have questions on this?
Yes, I think it makes sense.
Excellent, great. So how do we want to represent this?
So I think we need 2 different classes, one for vaccines and one for patients or person.
Why do you think we need to represent person?
In the person class, we have their name. I don't know. Do you mean that we can do them both in the vaccine class?
No, I'm just asking how you're designing this.
I think since there are complicated information on a patient, we have to make them different. We have to separate them.
Okay. All right. How do I begin?
So with the vaccine class, it says probably it has a name, the vaccine, so it's going to be a string name.
Okay.
And it just has first dose date and second dose date. And I think we again have to represent them by a string, right?
But it says that some vaccines are single dose and others are 2-dose. Let's start with an example, maybe. How's that?
Okay.
So Irfan is a patient, and he has a 2-dose vaccine. First one was September 1st. Second one is October 1st. Okay?
Okay.
And we wanted to say when we do Irfan dot fully vaccinated, we want it to return October 1st, right? Because that's the day that you're fully vaccinated. Okay. Alex is also a patient, takes a single dose vaccine, and her dose was September 15th. So Alex dot fully vaccinated should return September 15th.
That's right.
Okay. So now that you know this, how should we represent things? So you're saying we should have a patient class. Okay.
Okay.
And then you're saying have a vaccine class. But if you do it like a UML of this vaccine class, if you um, wanted to see what information should be in this vaccine class, what would you add?
The vaccine's name and the dates that patients have received the dose.
Um, but some of them have one date and some of them have two dates. So how are you representing dates?
I think in the vaccine class we can do it.
So what is the type for date?
We can ask them to write it in letters to use a string.
What did we learn in the previous?
So it's gonna be an int, I think. No, I know what you're saying, but you mean we can call the vaccine class through the patient class, right?
No. Let's forget about the patient. Let's just talk about vaccines. Don't worry about how we're gonna get vaccines from patients. Let's just talk about the vaccine. So you're saying we need a date. I'm saying since there's gonna be sometimes one date, sometimes two dates. How are you gonna represent this date? What is it? You're saying it's gonna be an int.
I'm saying it cannot be a string since we learned in the last problem.
Yeah, let's say even if it was a string, what would be an example of a string? What would the string be? What would it be for Alex's case?
September, like as you written, September.
Okay. What would it be for Irfan's case?
It will be 2 dates.
Uh-huh.
For Alex dates, the second one is going to be empty. For example, we should write.
Uh-huh. So you're saying you were gonna have date 1, which is September 15, and then September 1st. And then for date 2, you're saying you want string empty and then October 1st. Is that what you're... Yeah?
I think so.
Okay. Take a look at this. Do you see something that you're not sure about, that you're like, okay, this isn't great design, this isn't clean?
The thing is, one of the fields is empty, and I think we can do something with that.
Okay, so yes, that's one thing. It feels silly to have an empty field when you know for sure that this will be, not needed. Okay, what else? Take a look at the examples we have. Sep 15, September 1st, empty, October 1st.
Yes, there are different ways of expressions. Sep 15 and September 1st.
Yeah, so depending on how you create the instance, you're going to get different ways of expressing. And then later on, if you want to do anything with that, that's just going to create inaccuracies, right?
That is right, yes.
Okay, so this is excellent. So we found 2 problems. One, unnecessary empty field. And 2, different representations of dates. Okay, to fix the first problem, what if instead of a vaccine class, we had um, single dose vaccine class and double dose vaccine class.
Oh, so we separate the classes.
Yeah. Don't be afraid of having multiple classes. The more classes, if they're different enough that they need to be represented differently, it's okay to have different classes. Okay?
Okay.
Perfect. So we have two classes. Now it's super simple. Now the single dose vaccine only takes 1 date. The double dose vaccine takes 2 days. So Alex doesn't need to have an empty string. Alex will only have 1 date, which is September 15th. Okay?
Makes sense. Yeah.
For the second one, there are multiple ways of representing it. Always, always, always stay away from strings because of these problems, because of the fact that you can write it differently, that it's not mutable in the right way, like as in you can't change it that well, or you can't really make sense of it well. So instead, let's say you can represent it with int. So if it was int date, it could be something like
day, month, and year.
Yeah, exactly. So it could be like 01, 09, 2024, for example. Yeah? This would make perfect sense to people. You just need to have a comment that says day goes first, month goes second. The only problem is because some people are in America, they might do something like for October 1st, they might do 10/1/2024 because we do month, day, year. We do October 1st, 2024. And to change that problem, you can even have, you guessed it, class date that has a month, a day, and a year. Then it becomes super simple. This right here is the best design. If I see a homework with a date class and a single dose vaccine and a double dose vaccine and a date for both of these, that is perfect. That is the best design you can have.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Do you see why?
It totally makes sense. I just didn't know that we can use different classes. I mean, I knew we can use different, but I had no idea we can solve it this way.
Yeah, so this is the way that we want to try to solve in future as well. Because what we're aiming for is writing clean code and writing code that is bug free or is less likely to have bugs. This right here is so much less likely to have bugs. You're not going to mix up month and day because it's very simple. It's very obvious that you have a class.
Exactly, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so let's get to actually coding it now that we have this. So let's say this is class single dose vaccine. You can have a name, but the homework doesn't say anything about a name, so it's okay if you don't have a name. And then you want to have a date. How do you want to represent this? Should we go with the best way, or do you want the int?
No, let's separate them. Let's do it in another class.
Let's do a dates class.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Since it's a single dose, we can call it final dose. And then we would have the constructor. And separately, we can have class double dose vaccine. You want a name, so we can have that. We would have date first dose, date final dose. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. What are we missing?
The dates class.
Yes, exactly. So we want to add class date. And the class date, how should
Is
it be?
int month, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Int day and int year.
Perfect, perfect. I'm so proud of you for saying int and not string. Because later on, if like we wanted to, have a text method that says it in string, it's super easy to convert the two, right? Um, you just have a way to say, okay, for month one, we mean January and so forth, which we'll learn later. And then a constructor, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, let's create the example of let's create the example of Irfan's 2-dose vaccine. So it's going to be a double dose vaccine. Irfan's vaccine. And then how do we instantiate it?
It's new double dose vaccine.
Yep.
Then we have the name of the vaccine, like Pfizer,
Moderna.
let's say, Moderna,
Yeah.
whatever. The first date was 1st September.
Yeah, so how do we create this date?
Okay, so it's going to be date.
Like here?
Yeah.
Okay. What do I do after?
But how can we add the numbers here?
What did we do here? What did we do in the previous homework with the original Pokemon?
Oh yes. Now I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so separately we write like in a different line.
Mm-hmm.
We write date airphone vaccine.
We already have a name called Irfan's vaccine. Also, this date is not Irfan's vaccine. This date is a date.
So what should be the name of the class date?
How do we? What are you trying to write the date for? What is this first date gonna be?
First dose.
First dose. Perfect. That's the next good. Okay.
Then it's going to be 01.
It's gonna be new date, right?
New date, yeah.
Okay. So the first dose is gonna be September 1st. Yeah. So 01.
No, but I think in the class date we use the months first.
Yes, exactly. So
09. Then 01. 2024, let's say.
Is this right?
I think we need a comma between them, right?
There you go. Also, for ints, the 0 at the beginning doesn't get calculated, so you can just say 9/1/2024.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so now what do we do here?
What else did we have in the class? Can I see?
Double dose vaccine, we have a name, first dose, second, final dose.
So we already have the dates in it in another class.
Yeah, so how do we still need to pass it in to create a new double dose vaccine, right?
Mm.
Should we look back at
And
the
what do we
original
do?
Pokemon? What do we do here?
Um,
We created an original Pokemon, and then when we created it in the Pokemon instantiation, what did we do here?
just wrote origin.
Yeah, this origin is this, right? So I can call this Bob, and as long as this is also Bob,
Oh, okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what do I do here?
First dose,
Yep.
then the second dose.
Like this.
What was it? Can I see the class again? Final dose.
Um, okay. But when is the final dose?
So there are two dates, and we have just one of them, and it's the first dose.
Yes, exactly.
So we create another one of date and call it final dose.
Exactly. Oops. And the final
10,
dose. Yeah.
2, oh no, sorry, first, 2, 1, 10, 1, 2024.
Yes, exactly. All right. Now we have the double dose vaccine. How do we create the single dose vaccine for Alex?
We first write single dose vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Alex vaccine is new single dose vaccine. Let's say Pfizer. Then first dose. We can have the date and then add it here. So the next line we can have the dates.
Okay. What's the date?
Date first dose.
If I do
Date
this,
single dose.
yeah, because if I call it the same thing, Java will complain. It will say you already have a date first dose. I don't know what you want. Single dose.
Is
Okay.
new date.
Great.
And is yes, 15 September.
All right. Now what I do here?
Single dose.
Perfect.
Now it will represent the name and then the dates that the patient has received the dose, right?
Yes, exactly. Looks great. One thing here. What if I had the name right here? Would this be okay? So
No, it's not okay. Because we already called it in the previous line.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly. Yeah,
35.
Java will be like, what is a single dose? I don't know what that means. So you need to do it before. Perfect.
Oh,
Okay, so almost done. The one thing remaining is we need to say represent a way that returns the date when a person is fully vaccinated.
So I think we start the method by the design recipe. So we'll go by a string, hopefully here.
Wait,
I'm not
where
sure.
are we even putting this? Where is this method?
Isn't it in the main class? No, it's not in the main class.
Let's go back to the comments, the way that you wanted to represent things. Where would it make sense?
Should be there are three different classes for vaccines. So should we add it to all of them? I don't think so.
There are two different classes for vaccines, not three. There's a single dose and a double dose.
Okay, so we add it here.
What is here? Sorry, which one?
We add the method to represent the date here to the classes.
Which class?
Single dose and the double dose.
Okay, so that's just going to return the final dose, right?
Or we can add it to the date class.
How would the date class know the final dose? When you decide on these things, you have to think about where the information is relevant. Okay? So, for example, the date class is just thinking about what a date is and how to represent it. This could be used for your birthday. This could be used for next time you're going to a theme park. This can be used for anything. So it shouldn't have any extra information about vaccines because that's not what it's doing. It's talking about dates, month, day, and year. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So we know it's not going to be the date class. All right, great. Now we're thinking about where to put it instead. Let's read the problem. It's saying represent vaccines and a patient that has received one or two shots of vaccines. Okay? Add a method which returns the date when a person is fully vaccinated. So the date of their final dose. So this final dose information needs to be somewhere that's related to either patients or the vaccines.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
So let's go to our what's it called? Sorry. Let's go to our problem or example initially. We said Alex thought fully vaccinated would go like this. So initially we thought about doing this on the patient. So we can represent a patient, right? We said we would have a patient class. So if we were to represent a patient, it would be a name, and then it would also have a vaccine. But it can either be a single dose vaccine and a double dose vaccine, right?
That is right, yes.
Okay. But the more important thing is we want their final dose to be there. Just 1 second, please. Let me check something real quick. So later on in our classes, we'll learn how to represent this in a really, really clean way. But for the time being, let's say that we have a patient and they have both a single dose or actually not both, sorry. They have, yeah, I don't think we need the patient class actually, because the patient doesn't have any extra information that we need. So all we need to do is just add it in the single dose versus double dose vaccine. So then we can do something like Alex's vaccine dot fully vaccinated, and it will give us this date, and Erfan's vaccine dot fully vaccinated, it would give us this date. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes sense. So we add the method to the vaccine classes.
Yes, exactly. So we don't need to represent the patients for now. What? And you said you wanted to do this with the design recipe. How do we do this?
Yes, so to represent the final dose, the fully vaccinated dose, we go by final dose dot. No, first we need the signature.
Yes, or the purpose statement. So the first step I think was the purpose statement. So it's when the vaccine has fully been injected. Okay. So the signature, what's the signature? What is the input and output type?
Input type is a date.
Since the method is inside this, we already have access to all the information we need. So the input is empty, right?
Okay.
Okay. What's the output?
It's the final dose.
Okay. What's the type of the output?
The final dose is going to be an int.
Are you sure? What do we have here?
It's a date type.
Yeah, exactly. So the output can be a date. Let's spend a second here. Does this make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
Right? Because we already have date, so we know that that's the best way to represent date. And we know that we're inside this class, so we don't need any extra thing because we can just do it with this dot final dose, right?
Yeah, you're right. So here we say yes, return this dot final dose.
Precisely. Great. And then what about here?
Again, date fully vaccinated.
It's the same thing, right?
Exactly.
Okay, great. Awesome job with this homework. I know this was pretty difficult, but the design choices you make here are very important. So, great job here.
Thank you, Alex.
Have a great one. Bye.
You too. Bye.